The notification flashed across my screen at exactly 5:03 in the evening. Access denied. System privileges revoked. I stared at the red error message, my fingers frozen above the keyboard. Across the open floor plan, Wesley Harmon stood by his office door, arms crossed, that infuriating smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "Guess you weren't that essential after all, Ellison," he called out, loud enough for the entire development team to hear. The clatter of keyboards around me stopped. Heads turned. This was the show he wanted. I saved my work on my personal laptop, closed it slowly, and stood up. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my voice came out steady and cold. "Wesley, you might want to check which machine the build server is hosted on before you celebrate." The smirk flickered. Just for a second, but I saw it. I picked up my bag, walked past his office, and didn't look back. By the time I reached the parking garage, my phone was already vibrating. I didn't answer. An hour later, the smirk would be completely gone. Welcome to the Payback Office channel, where we dive into the stories of workplace dynamics that most people only whisper about in break rooms. These are real situations where standing your ground changes everything. I'm glad you're here for this one, because what happened next turned an entire department upside down. If you appreciate these kinds of stories about people who refuse to be pushed around, and the consequences that follow, consider hitting that subscribe button. We're building a community here, working our way toward 9,000 subscribers who believe that respect in the workplace isn't optional. Your support keeps these stories coming. My name is Margaret Ellison, and until that Friday afternoon, I was the senior DevOps engineer at Crestwood Solutions, a mid-sized software company in Denver. I'd built systems from the ground up, automated workflows that saved the company hundreds of hours monthly, and mentored junior developers who are now thriving in their careers. My father was a mechanic, my mother a school secretary. They taught me that expertise earns respect, and respect is never about rolling over when someone tries to take advantage of you. Let me take you back to how this all started, because what looked like a single moment of defiance was actually the culmination of 6 months of escalating disrespect. January felt like a fresh start. I'd been with Crestwood Solutions for 3 years, and the company had just promoted me to senior DevOps engineer. The recognition felt good, earned. I'd spent countless nights ensuring our deployment pipeline ran smoothly, our servers stayed operational, and our disaster recovery protocols could handle anything. The raise that came with the promotion was modest, but the title meant something. It meant my expertise was acknowledged. That same month, I met Alex at a friend's dinner party. He was a graphic designer with an easy laugh and a genuine curiosity about my work, even when I got too technical explaining containerization strategies. We started dating casually, coffee here, a movie there. By March, it had become something steady and real. 6 months into our relationship now, he'd become my sounding board, the person I'd decompress with after complicated days. He'd need that patience more than either of us realized. The problems began in February when Crestwood hired Wesley Harmon as the new director of engineering. His resume looked impressive on paper. 10 years in tech management, experience scaling teams, all the right buzzwords. What the resume didn't show was his management philosophy, which I'd summarize as extract maximum output while providing minimum respect. Wesley's first team meeting set the tone. He walked in 15 minutes late, didn't apologize, and immediately launched into a speech about optimizing performance and eliminating complacency. He made it clear he believed the engineering team had been coasting. Never mind that we'd successfully launched 4 major product updates in the previous year with 0 critical failures. Never mind our customer satisfaction scores. Wesley had decided we weren't working hard enough, and he was there to fix us. I should have seen it coming. There's always a type of manager who mistakes cruelty for leadership, who confuses fear with motivation. The first incident happened on a Tuesday evening in late February. I was wrapping up for the day, documentation completed, servers humming along smoothly, when Wesley stopped by my desk. "Margaret, I need you to reconfigure the staging environment tonight. Marketing wants to demo the new features tomorrow morning, and the current setup won't work." I looked up from shutting down my workstation. The staging environment is configured correctly for the current build. What specifically needs to change? They need the beta interface, not the standard one. That's a significant change. It'll take at least 4 hours to reconfigure, test, and verify everything's stable. I can get started first thing tomorrow and have it ready by noon. Wesley's expression hardened. They need it for a 9 a.m. meeting. Then someone should have put in the request yesterday, or this morning. I can't reconfigure a complex environment without proper time. Are you refusing to do your job? The question hung in the air, loaded and deliberate. Around us, the few remaining team members suddenly became very focused on their screens. I'm saying that quality work requires adequate time. If I rush this tonight, we risk the demo failing tomorrow anyway. Give me the morning, and I'll deliver something reliable. Wesley leaned against my desk, invading my space in that calculated way some managers do. At my last company, senior engineers understood that sometimes we make sacrifices. We go the extra mile. We don't watch the clock. At this company, senior engineers have been delivering exceptional results during work hours. I'll be here at 7 a.m. to start the reconfiguration. He stared at me for a long moment, then pushed off from my desk. Fine, but this attitude won't fly long-term, Ellison. Keep that in mind. I did come in at 7 the next morning. I had the staging environment reconfigured, tested, and documented by 11:15. The marketing demo went perfectly. Wesley didn't acknowledge the success or thank me for the early start. That's when I knew this wasn't about performance. It was about control. March brought more of the same, but with increasing frequency. Wesley would drop requests at 4:45 that needed to be done before end of day. He'd schedule meetings at 5:30 p.m. to quickly discuss issues that took an hour to resolve. He'd send emails at 11 p.m. with the expectation of responses before morning. The pattern was clear. He was testing boundaries, seeing who would bend, who would break, who would sacrifice their time without pushback. Some of my colleagues started staying later. Thomas, one of the mid-level developers, began routinely working until 8 or 9 p.m. When I asked him why, he shrugged tiredly. Wesley keeps finding issues with my code reviews. Says they're not thorough enough. If I do them during the day, he says I'm neglecting my development work, so I do them after hours. That's not sustainable, Thomas. Yeah, well, neither is being on Wesley's bad side. Amanda, another DevOps engineer, started coming in on Saturdays. Just to catch up, she said, but we both knew it was because Wesley had made it clear that his definition of dedicated involved visible weekend work. The company didn't pay overtime. We were all salaried employees, which Wesley seemed to interpret as unlimited free labor. I maintained my boundaries. I worked my 8 hours, sometimes 9 when genuine emergencies occurred, and I delivered exceptional results. My deployment success rate was 98%. My documentation was thorough. My code was clean. By every objective measure, I was exceeding expectations. But Wesley didn't care about objective measures. He cared about compliance. In early April, he started documenting everything. I'd get follow-up emails after every conversation. Per our discussion, you indicated you were unable to complete the server migration outside business hours. The phrasing was always slightly twisted, designed to make reasonable boundaries sound like refusals to work. I started documenting too, every request, every timeline, every delivery. I kept meticulous records of what was asked, when it was needed, and when I delivered. My personal folder of screenshots and saved emails grew thick. Alex noticed the stress. "You're holding your jaw tight again," he said one evening as we tried to enjoy dinner at our favorite Thai place. Wesley. Always Wesley. He asked me today why I never stay past 6. I told him because my work is done. He said committed employees don't watch the clock. You're one of the most committed people I know. You love your work. I do love my work. I don't love being manipulated into donating my free time to make some insecure manager feel powerful. Alex reached across the table, squeezed my hand. You'll figure it out, you always do. I appreciated his confidence, but I wasn't sure. The situation felt like slowly tightening a vice. Wesley was building a narrative, laying groundwork for something. I just didn't know what yet. The breaking point started building in late April. Crestwood landed a major client, a healthcare company that needed a custom deployment solution. The contract was significant, potentially 20% revenue increase for the company. Wesley called an all-hands engineering meeting to announce it. "This is our priority for the next 6 weeks. Whatever it takes, we deliver this flawlessly. I expect full commitment from everyone. And when I say everyone, I mean everyone." His eyes landed on me for that last word. The implication was clear. The project itself was challenging, but manageable. The client needed a secure, HIPAA-compliant deployment pipeline with specific redundancy and audit requirements. It was exactly the kind of complex infrastructure work I excelled at. I drafted the architecture proposal, got approval from the client's technical team, and began implementation. But Wesley didn't just want the work done. He wanted visible suffering. He scheduled daily stand-ups at 7 a.m. and status meetings at 6 p.m. He demanded weekend progress reports. He created Slack channels where he'd post at all hours, expecting immediate responses. The project became less about delivering excellent work and more about performing constant availability. I maintained my approach. I attended the scheduled business hour meetings. I delivered my portions of the project on time and with meticulous quality. I responded to after-hours messages the next business morning, and Wesley's frustration became increasingly obvious. "Margaret, I need you more engaged with this project," he said during a one-on-one in early May. "I'm fully engaged. My deliverables are ahead of schedule." Engagement isn't just about deliverables. It's about being present, being available. The team sees you leaving at 6 every night. The team also sees my code, passing every review, and my infrastructure components working flawlessly. This isn't just about technical work, Margaret. It's about culture, team solidarity. When everyone else is here late, grinding it out, and you're walking out the door, what message does that send? I kept my voice level, professional. It sends the message that efficient work during business hours produces better results than exhausted work during unpaid overtime. Wesley's jaw tightened. "Your attitude is becoming a problem." My attitude or my boundaries? There's no difference in a team environment. That conversation ended with nothing resolved, but the temperature had risen. We both knew we were heading toward collision. The healthcare deployment project wrapped in mid-May, 2 days ahead of schedule. The client was thrilled. Their technical lead sent an email praising the infrastructure's elegance and reliability. My architecture handled their complex requirements while remaining maintainable and well-documented. It was some of my best work. Wesley forwarded the client's email to the executive team, naturally positioning himself as the driving force behind the success. My name appeared once in the forwarded chain, buried in a list of team contributors. That stung, but it wasn't surprising. Taking credit was part of his pattern. What happened next, though, surprised me. The CEO, Franklin Oakes, sent a company-wide congratulations email specifically mentioning my infrastructure design. Someone on the client side had apparently raved about it directly to Franklin during a golf outing. For a brief moment, I felt vindicated. Recognition from the top. Proof that excellence speaks louder than performative overtime. Wesley's mood darkened immediately. The day after Franklin's email, Wesley announced a process improvement initiative. Every engineer would now be required to log their hours in detail, breaking down time spent on specific tasks. For resource allocation optimization, he explained in the announcement, but I knew what it really was. A paper trail to document who was working beyond 40 hours and who wasn't. I logged my hours honestly. 40 hours of exceptional productivity, sometimes 45 when genuine issues required attention. My task completion rate remained the highest on the team. Didn't matter. In Wesley's calculus, 50 hours of mediocre work outranked 40 hours of excellence. June brought summer heat to Denver and increased pressure at work. Wesley started assigning me to more projects, but with deliberately tight timelines. A database migration that should take a week, due in 3 days. A security audit that needed careful analysis, due tomorrow. Each assignment came with the unspoken expectation that I'd work nights and weekends to meet his arbitrary deadlines. I pushed back with solutions. This timeline isn't realistic for quality work. I can deliver a solid database migration in 6 days or a rushed one with potential data integrity issues in 3. Which would you prefer? Always framing it around business outcomes, not personal boundaries. Wesley would glare, sometimes extend the deadline by a day, sometimes not. When deadlines were genuinely impossible, I documented why and what could be delivered in the available time. Then I delivered exactly that, with complete transparency about what remained. My colleagues were exhausted. Amanda had stopped going to her cycling class. Thomas mentioned he couldn't remember the last time he'd made it to his daughter's soccer game. The entire team was fraying, running on stress and caffeine. Several people had started job hunting quietly. I heard whispers in the break room about resumes being updated, about LinkedIn messages from recruiters. Alex noticed I was struggling too, even though I maintained my hours. "You're home physically, but you're not here," he said one evening. We were supposed to be watching a movie, but I'd been staring at my phone, rereading a condescending email from Wesley about my minimal contribution to a project I'd actually architected. "Sorry, work is just intense right now." "It's been intense for months. Is it getting worse?" I set the phone down, looked at him. Wesley is trying to force me out or force me to comply. Those are the only 2 options he sees, and I'm not doing either. "What are you doing?" "My job exceptionally well, on my terms." "And if he doesn't accept that?" "Then we'll find out what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object." That conversation happened on a Thursday. By Friday, the collision arrived. The day started normally. I came in at 8, grabbed coffee, reviewed my task list. The main item was routine maintenance on our build server, the critical infrastructure that compiled all our code and created deployable packages. I'd built that system myself 2 years ago, a custom solution running on a dedicated virtual machine. It was hosted on company infrastructure, but configured through my administrative account because I was the only one with the expertise to manage it properly. The setup was documented, backed up, and ran flawlessly. At 11 a.m., Wesley called an impromptu meeting. Just him and me in one of the small conference rooms. That should have been my first warning. "Margaret, we need to talk about your commitment level." Here we go. I'd been expecting this conversation for weeks. "What specifically are you concerned about?" "The team is pushing hard on the new feature set for the August release. Everyone's putting in extra hours. Except you. I'm ahead of schedule on every assigned task for the August release. Would you like to review my completed work?" Wesley waved dismissively. "It's not about individual tasks. It's about team cohesion, about showing dedication. I need you here this weekend to help with integration testing." Integration testing isn't scheduled until next week, and it's not my assigned responsibility. Kevin and Rachel are handling that. "I'm reassigning it. I need you here Saturday and Sunday." And there it was, not a request, a demand for weekend work that wasn't necessary, wasn't my responsibility, and was clearly just a power play. I took a breath, kept my voice steady. "No." The word hung between us, simple, clear, final. Wesley's eyebrows rose in theatrical surprise. "Excuse me." "No, I won't be working this weekend. The integration testing doesn't require my involvement, and there's no emergency that justifies weekend work. If you need me to reprioritize my weekday tasks to support the testing, I can do that." "This isn't a negotiation, Margaret." "You're right, it's not. You're asking me to work uncompensated hours on tasks that don't require my expertise. That's not reasonable, and I'm declining." Wesley leaned back, and that smirk appeared, the one I'd seen before when he thought he had someone cornered. "I see, so you're refusing a direct assignment from your manager." "I'm declining to work off the clock on unnecessary weekend assignments. If you'd like to classify integration testing support as urgent and assign it to me during business hours next week, I'm happy to help. Your employment here is contingent on meeting the needs of your role. And I've exceeded every metric and expectation of my role during business hours." The meeting ended badly. Wesley made vague references to reconsidering team composition and evaluating cultural fit. I left the conference room knowing something was coming, but not sure what. I spent the afternoon finishing up my current tasks, updating documentation, ensuring everything I was responsible for was in perfect order. Call it instinct or paranoia, but I wanted no loose ends. At 4:30, I got a calendar invitation for 5 p.m. Wesley and Holly Brennan from Human Resources. My stomach tightened. A late Friday meeting with HR present was never good news. I took the remaining 30 minutes to back up my personal files, export important work documents to my personal laptop where allowed, and text Alex. Might be late tonight. HR meeting. I'll explain later. 5 o'clock arrived. I walked into the conference room where Wesley and Holly waited. Holly looked uncomfortable, wouldn't quite meet my eyes. Wesley looked satisfied. Thanks for joining us, Margaret. Holly, would you like to start? Holly cleared her throat, referenced a document on her tablet. Margaret, we've received concerns from Wesley about your willingness to fulfill role requirements and contribute to team efforts. Specifically, repeated refusals to complete assigned work and absence from critical project activities. I kept my voice calm, but my heart was racing. That characterization is inaccurate. I've completed every assigned task, most ahead of deadline, with exceptional quality metrics. What I've declined is uncompensated work, outside business hours, on non-urgent matters. Wesley jumped in. Your role as senior engineer includes an expectation of flexibility and availability. Within reason, yes, not unlimited unpaid labor. Holly shifted uncomfortably. The concern is about team collaboration and meeting business needs. I looked directly at her. Holly, are you aware that I've delivered 98% deployment success over the past 6 months? That the healthcare client specifically praised my infrastructure work to the CEO? That I'm ahead of schedule on every August release task? Your technical work isn't in question, Wesley interjected smoothly. Your attitude and availability are. My boundaries, you mean? Call it what you want. The reality is this team needs people who are committed, fully committed. And if you're not willing to do what's necessary, we need to reconsider if this is the right fit. There it was, the threat finally explicit. I had 2 choices. Cave and accept that my time belonged to Wesley whenever he demanded it, or hold firm and face consequences. Every career advice article would probably tell me to be diplomatic, to find middle ground, to smooth things over. But I'd watched this pattern for months. There was no middle ground with Wesley. There was only submission or defiance. I am fully committed to excellent work during business hours and reasonable accommodation for genuine emergencies. If that's not acceptable, then you're right, we should reconsider this fit. Wesley's smirk widened. He thought I'd blinked first. Holly, please proceed with what we discussed. Holly pulled out a formal letter. Margaret, we're placing you on a performance improvement plan effective immediately. You'll have 30 days to demonstrate improved collaboration and flexibility. Wesley will provide specific expectations. A performance improvement plan. The corporate kiss of death, the paperwork prelude to termination. I'd seen it happen to others. The PIP would include vague, subjective goals that Wesley could claim were unmet regardless of what I did. 30 days of documented failures to justify firing me. My hands wanted to shake, but I kept them steady. I'd like a copy of that plan in writing, including specific, measurable objectives. You'll receive it Monday, Holly said. And I'd like to note for the record that this appears retaliatory following my refusal to work uncompensated weekend hours. Holly's discomfort intensified. The company has legitimate business reasons for performance concerns. Then those reasons should be documented with specific examples and metrics, which I look forward to reviewing. I stood. Is there anything else? Wesley waved dismissively. That's all. Enjoy your weekend, Margaret. The sarcasm was thick. I walked out, head high, even though fury and fear warred in my chest. A PIP, after 3 years of exceptional work, after building critical systems, after going above and beyond for actual emergencies countless times. All because I wouldn't let a petty tyrant control my off hours. I went back to my desk, gathered my things. The office was mostly empty, just a few developers with headphones on, lost in code. I logged out of my workstation, shut it down properly. Then I headed for the elevator. Wesley's office was visible from the elevator bay. Through his glass walls, I could see him on his phone, probably reporting to someone that he'd put the troublemaker in her place. That's when I noticed the calendar reminder on my phone. The build server. The routine maintenance I'd planned to finish before leaving. The build server that was absolutely critical for Monday's deployment. The build server that ran on infrastructure tied to my administrative access. I stopped walking, stood there in the corridor thinking. Then I opened my laptop, connected to the company VPN, and checked the build server configuration. Hosted on a virtual machine that I'd provisioned through my admin account 2 years ago. Managed through permissions tied to my credentials. I'd been the sole maintainer by design because the configuration was complex and critical. I closed the laptop, didn't touch anything, didn't change anything, just verified what I already knew, then I went home. Alex had ordered pizza and queued up a comedy special, his usual tactic when I needed decompression. I told him everything over pepperoni slices and beer. The ultimatum, the performance improvement plan, the whole ugly situation. "So what are you going to do?" he asked. "Honestly, I don't know. The PIP is basically a termination countdown. Even if I work weekends, even if I'm available 24/7, Wesley will find reasons to say I'm not meeting expectations. That's how these things work. Can you talk to someone above him? The CEO seemed to appreciate your work. Going over your manager's head is risky, and HR is already involved. They're backing him." Alex was quiet for a moment, then said, "You know you're incredible at what you do, right? Any company would be lucky to have you." "I know, but I also know that references matter and leaving under a PIP looks bad. Wesley's boxing me in." We watched the comedy special, but I barely laughed. My mind kept circling the problem, looking for angles, strategies, ways out. Around 11 p.m., my work phone buzzed. An email from Wesley. Subject line, "Weekend assignment mandatory." I opened it. A list of tasks due by Sunday evening. Configuration updates, security patches, documentation reviews, 8 to 10 hours of work easily. And at the bottom, failure to complete these assignments will be documented as PIP noncompliance. So it started immediately. The impossible expectations, the weekend demands, the documentation of failure. I showed Alex the email. "That's insane. Half of that isn't even your job." "Doesn't matter. He's building his paper trail." I didn't respond to the email that night, didn't acknowledge it. I finished my beer, tried to sleep, and spent most of the night staring at the ceiling. Saturday morning arrived with another email from Wesley. "Haven't seen confirmation you received yesterday's assignment. Respond by noon." I spent Saturday hiking with Alex, phone on silent. The mountains outside Denver were beautiful in June, aspens still fresh and green. We talked about everything except work. About the vacation we'd been planning to Oregon. About his new design project for a local nonprofit. About whether we should get a dog. Normal things, life things, the things that actually mattered. Sunday afternoon, I opened my laptop and drafted a response to Wesley's emails. "I received your messages. As discussed, I'm not available for off-the-clock work. I'll address any urgent business needs during work hours Monday." Short. Professional, firm. His response came within 20 minutes. "Your refusal to complete assigned work is noted and will be included in your PIP documentation. This pattern of noncompliance is unacceptable." I didn't reply, just closed the laptop and tried to enjoy what remained of the weekend. Monday morning would come soon enough. It arrived with rain, unusual for Denver in June. I got to the office at my normal time, 8 a.m., coffee in hand. The parking lot was oddly full for that hour. Multiple cars I recognized as belonging to senior staff. Something was happening. I badged into the building, took the elevator to the 3rd floor. The engineering area felt tense. People were clustered in small groups, talking quietly. Thomas saw me and hurried over. "Margit, did you do something to the build server?" My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "It's down, completely inaccessible. They've been trying to fix it since 7 a.m. Wesley's losing his mind." I walked toward my desk, passing Wesley's office. Through the glass walls, I could see him with two IT staff members, all of them staring at a laptop screen with expressions of frustration and confusion. I set my bag down, logged into my workstation. Everything was normal for me. Then I checked the build server. Access denied. But not for the server being down. The access denial was because my credentials had been revoked. I pulled up the admin logs, which I still had access to through a different system. There it was. Friday at 5:03 p.m., my system privileges had been revoked across the board. Someone in IT, almost certainly at Wesley's direction, had killed my access. Standard procedure when putting someone on a PIP, I guess. Limit their system permissions to reduce security risk. Except whoever did it hadn't understood the architecture. Hadn't realized that the build server, the critical infrastructure that compiled all our code and created deployable packages, was hosted on a virtual machine provisioned through my administrative account. When they revoked my access, they didn't just lock me out. They locked everyone out because the permissions cascaded through the system in a way that made the VM inaccessible. It wasn't sabotage. I hadn't touched anything. This was purely an unforced error, a self-inflicted wound caused by Wesley's rush to restrict my access without understanding the dependencies. I sat at my desk, sipping coffee, waiting. It took about 15 minutes. Wesley emerged from his office, scanning the floor. His eyes found me and he stormed over. "Ellison, my office, now." I took another sip of coffee, saved my work, and followed him. The two IT staff members were still there, both looking exhausted and stressed. One was Kevin Portman, a senior IT administrator I'd worked with on several projects. The other was a newer guy, whose name I didn't remember. Wesley didn't waste time on pleasantries. "What did you do to the build server?" I kept my expression neutral, mildly curious. "I haven't accessed the build server since last Thursday. What's the problem?" "It's completely locked. No one can access it. And conveniently, this happens right after you refuse your weekend assignments." The implication was clear. He thought I'd sabotaged it out of spite. I looked at Kevin. "What error are you getting?" Kevin, to his credit, looked uncomfortable with the whole situation. "Permission denied at the VM host level. We can't access the virtual machine itself." "When did this start?" "We first noticed it around 6:45 this morning when automated builds failed. But according to the logs, access was terminated Friday evening." "Friday at 5:03 p.m. specifically," I said quietly. Wesley's eyes narrowed. "How do you know the exact time if you didn't touch it?" "Because that's when my system privileges were revoked. I'm guessing someone in IT did a blanket access removal, probably at your request. And that someone didn't realize the build server VM is provisioned under my administrative account." The color drained slightly from Wesley's face. "You're saying the server is down because of your access revocation." "I'm saying the VM that hosts the build server became inaccessible when my provisioning permissions were removed. It's a dependency issue in the architecture." The newer IT guy jumped in. "We can restore access. We just need to reconfigure the VM host permissions." I nodded slowly. "You could do that. It'll take a full rebuild of the permission structure, probably 6 to 8 hours if you're familiar with the configuration. Longer if you're not. The documentation is in the shared drive under my admin folder, which you also probably can't access now." Wesley's jaw clenched so hard I could hear his teeth. "Or you could fix it in, 30 minutes?" "If I had access, probably less than that. It's just a matter of restoring the permission chains and verifying the integrity." "Then do it." I looked at him steadily. "I don't have access. Remember, you had it revoked." "Kevin, restore her access, now." Kevin pulled out his laptop, started typing. "It'll take about 10 minutes to process through the system." Wesley turned back to me. "And then you'll fix the build server immediately." "During my normal work hours, yes, I'll prioritize it." "This is an emergency. It needs to be fixed immediately." "I understand the urgency. I'll start working on it as soon as my access is restored." Wesley leaned forward, voice dropping to a threatening level. "Don't play games, Margaret. Fix this now, or the consequences will be severe." I didn't flinch. "I'm not playing games. I'm doing my job during business hours, which is exactly what we discussed on Friday. Or are you now saying that my work hours and availability are acceptable after all? The trap closed visibly. If he demanded I drop everything and fix it immediately, he was admitting the work was urgent and necessary, which contradicted his position that my boundaries were unreasonable. If he didn't, the build server stayed down, blocking the entire development pipeline. Before Wesley could respond, Kevin spoke up. Access is restored. Margaret, you should be able to log in now. I pulled out my laptop, connected to the network, and verified. Full access restored. I navigated to the build server configuration, quickly diagnosed the permission cascade failure, and began restoring the proper access chains. It was exactly as I'd expected. The revocation had broken the VMS permission inheritance, locking everyone out. Fixing it was straightforward if you understood the architecture. 12 minutes later, the build server was back online. I ran a full diagnostic, verified all services were operational, and checked the queue of failed builds. Systems restored. The overnight builds that failed will need to be manually triggered, but everything's functional. Kevin looked relieved. The other IT guy actually slumped in his chair. Wesley just stared at me, that smirk completely gone, replaced by barely controlled fury. You could have mentioned this dependency Friday. I could have, but Friday evening I was focused on the performance improvement plan, meeting, and wasn't aware you were planning to revoke my access. Generally, major access changes go through a review process to catch exactly this kind of issue. You built a critical system with a single point of failure. I built a critical system with documented architecture and proper backup procedures. The single point of failure was removing the administrator's access without consulting the infrastructure documentation. Wesley's face flushed. Get back to work. I closed my laptop and stood. Certainly, I'll send a summary email about the incident and recommendations for preventing similar issues. I walked back to my desk, aware that every conversation in the engineering area stopped as I passed. Word had already spread. The build server had been down, blocking all work. Now it was up, and everyone had a pretty good idea of why and how. I sat down and drafted the email carefully. Professional. Factual. No editorializing. Just a clear explanation that the build server VM had become inaccessible due to permission cascades following administrative access changes, and recommendations for implementing a review process for future access modifications affecting infrastructure components. I CC'd Holly from HR and Franklin, the CEO. Transparency all around. The response came faster than I expected. At 11:30 a.m., Holly emailed asking me to come to her office. When I arrived, Franklin was there too, along with Wesley. This was escalating quickly. Franklin gestured to a chair. Margaret, thanks for coming. We're trying to understand what happened this morning. I sat, keeping my posture relaxed and professional. The build server became inaccessible over the weekend due to a permission configuration issue. I restored access this morning. Wesley mentioned, you suggested this was related to your access being revoked Friday. Not suggested, that's what happened. The VM hosting the build server was provisioned through my admin account. When my access was globally revoked, the permission inheritance broke, making the VM inaccessible. Franklin looked at Wesley. Why was Margaret's access revoked? Wesley shifted slightly. Standard protocol, when an employee is placed on a performance improvement plan, we limit system access to reduce security risks. A blanket revocation, without reviewing dependencies. We have procedures, Wesley said defensively. Franklin turned to me. Why was the build server tied to your personal admin account? When I built the system 2 years ago, I was the senior DevOps engineer responsible for that infrastructure. The VM was provisioned under my credentials, which was standard practice at the time. The architecture is fully documented, and backup access procedures exist. The issue only occurred because the access revocation didn't follow the infrastructure review process. So this could have been prevented. Yes, either by consulting the infrastructure documentation before revoking access or by restoring my access quickly this morning. which is what happened. Franklin was quiet for a moment, then looked at Holly. Why is Margaret on a performance improvement plan? Her work has been exceptional. Holly glanced at Wesley, clearly uncomfortable. Wesley raised concerns about collaboration and availability. Specifically, Wesley jumped in. Margaret has repeatedly refused assignments and declined to work beyond minimal hours. She's not demonstrating the commitment we need from senior engineers. What assignments did she refuse? Weekend work on integration testing, evening availability for project discussions, the kind of flexibility that's expected at her level. Franklin turned to me. Is that accurate? I chose my words carefully. I declined to work uncompensated hours outside of business time on tasks that were either non-urgent or not within my core responsibilities. Every assignment within my role during business hours has been completed ahead of schedule with high-quality metrics. So you refuse to work weekends? I declined to work unpaid overtime when there was no genuine emergency requiring it. Franklin leaned back, processing. The room was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke, looking at Wesley. What was the business justification for requiring weekend work on integration testing? Wesley bristled slightly. We needed the work completed. Was there a client deadline, a critical failure, an actual emergency? The August release timeline is aggressive. But according to Margaret's email, she's ahead of schedule on her August deliverables. So why did integration testing, which isn't her responsibility, require her weekend time? Wesley's expression hardened. With respect, Franklin, managing my team's workload and expectations is my responsibility. I need engineers who are willing to do what it takes. Within legal and reasonable bounds, yes. Requiring regular unpaid overtime isn't reasonable, and depending on how it's mandated, it may not be legal. The temperature in the room shifted. Wesley had overplayed his hand, and Franklin was seeing it. Holly looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair. I stayed quiet, letting Franklin's logic work. Franklin turned to Holly. Was the performance improvement plan reviewed by anyone besides Wesley? I reviewed it from a procedural standpoint. But not the substance, not whether the performance concerns were valid. Holly hesitated. I relied on the manager's assessment of performance issues. Franklin's expression tightened in a way I'd never seen before. He was known as an easygoing CEO, friendly and approachable. But right now, he looked seriously displeased. So we put a senior engineer with exceptional metrics on a PIP, revoked her access without infrastructure review, caused a critical system outage, and the basis for all of this was her refusal to work unpaid weekends. No one answered. The silence stretched painfully. Finally, Franklin spoke again. Here's what's going to happen. Holly, cancel the performance improvement plan. It's not justified by any objective performance metrics. Wesley, we're going to have a separate conversation about management practices and legal compliance. Margaret, I apologize for this situation. Your work is valued, and your boundaries are reasonable. I felt tension I didn't know I was holding release from my shoulders. Thank you. Franklin stood. Holly, Wesley, let's continue this in my office. He looked at me. Take the rest of the day if you need it, and again, I'm sorry. They filed out, Wesley's face a mask of barely suppressed rage. I sat alone in Holly's office for a moment, processing what had just happened. The PIP was canceled. Franklin had backed me up. Wesley was in trouble, not me. I went back to my desk, still slightly in shock. Thomas approached cautiously. So, everything okay? Yeah, everything's okay. The build server thing was legendary, by the way. Half the team is calling you a genius. I laughed, surprising myself. I didn't plan it. It was just unfortunate timing and poor access management. Sure, Thomas said with a knowing grin. Unfortunate timing. Word spread fast. By lunch, everyone knew the broad strokes. Margaret's access got revoked, the build server died, she fixed it in minutes, and management had a come-to moment about Wesley's practices. I became an inadvertent hero of workplace boundaries. Alex called during lunch. How's your Monday? Interesting, very interesting. I'll tell you everything tonight. Good interesting or bad interesting? Surprisingly good, I think. That afternoon, I worked on my regular tasks, updating security patches and reviewing deployment logs. Around 3 p.m., Franklin stopped by my desk personally. Margaret got a minute. We walked to an empty conference room. Franklin closed the door and sat down with a tired sigh. I owe you more than an apology. I should have been paying closer attention to what was happening in engineering. You run the whole company. You can't monitor every manager. True, but Wesley's approach has been problematic, and I missed it. Several people have left the team in the past few months. I attributed it to normal turnover, but I should have looked deeper. I nodded slowly. The environment has been challenging. That's a diplomatic way to put it. Here's where we are. Wesley is being placed on administrative leave while we review his management practices. I'll be working with HR to investigate complaints and determine next steps. In the meantime, I need someone to oversee engineering operations. Would you be willing to step into an interim lead role? The offer caught me completely off guard. Interim engineering lead. You have the technical expertise, the respect of the team, and clearly the judgment to handle difficult situations. It would come with appropriate compensation, and depending on how things develop, it could become permanent. I thought about Wesley's approach, the exhaustion I'd seen in my colleagues, the unsustainable pressure. Then I thought about what leadership could look like if it was built on respect instead of fear. I'd want to make some changes. Work-life balance, realistic timelines, ending the expectation of unpaid overtime. Franklin smiled. That's exactly why I'm asking you. The team needs someone who understands that sustainable performance comes from reasonable expectations. Then yes, I'm willing to try. Good, I'll have Holly draw up the paperwork. You'll start tomorrow with a team meeting to transition responsibilities. We shook hands and Franklin left. I sat in the conference room for a few minutes, processing the whiplash of the day. This morning, I'd been facing a performance improvement plan and likely termination. Now I was interim engineering lead. The shift was dizzying. I texted Alex, "You're not going to believe what just happened." His response, "Knowing you, probably something amazing." The team meeting Tuesday morning was awkward at first. Everyone knew Wesley was gone, but no one knew exactly why or for how long. I kept it simple and honest. Wesley is on leave while some management practices are reviewed. Franklin asked me to oversee engineering operations in the interim. I know this is a sudden change, and I want to hear from all of you about what you need to do your best work. Thomas spoke first. Honestly, sleep, and maybe seeing my family occasionally. Nervous laughter rippled through the room, but it was genuine. That's fair, I said. Here's my philosophy. We deliver exceptional work during reasonable hours. Emergencies happen, and when they do, we handle them. But manufactured urgency and routine unpaid overtime aren't acceptable. We're going to build sustainable practices. Amanda raised her hand. What about the time tracking system Wesley implemented? We'll keep tracking for project allocation purposes, but I'm not interested in using it to police hours. I care about results and sustainability, not performative presenteeism. The relief in the room was visible. Rachel, one of the front-end developers, asked, "What if clients or executives demand impossible timelines?" Then we have honest conversations about what's achievable and what the trade-offs are. We're professionals, and part of our job is providing realistic assessments. We don't promise what we can't deliver sustainably. The meeting continued for an hour, everyone sharing frustrations and ideas. By the end, the mood had shifted from anxious to cautiously optimistic. We had work to do rebuilding the team culture, but it felt possible. Over the next 2 weeks, I implemented changes systematically. Canceled the 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. meetings, replacing them with a single daily stand-up at 9:30. Established a clear escalation process for after-hours issues, with compensatory time off for anyone who had to work evenings or weekends. Reviewed project timelines with the team and adjusted unrealistic deadlines. Created transparency around workload, so no one was drowning silently. The results were almost immediate. Team morale improved. People started smiling again. Thomas made it to his daughter's soccer game and sent me a thank you message with a photo of her scoring a goal. Amanda rejoined her cycling group. The quiet job hunting stopped. Productivity actually increased. Turned out that well-rested engineers with reasonable expectations produced better work than exhausted ones working under constant pressure. Who knew? Franklin checked in weekly. How's it going? Good, the team is responding well to having sustainable expectations. I've noticed, project velocity is up, and I haven't gotten any weekend emergency calls. You're doing what I hoped. What's happening with Wesley? Franklin's expression tightened. The investigation found multiple issues: unreasonable work demands, retaliatory behavior, creating a hostile environment. We're parting ways. His employment ended yesterday. I absorbed that. Wesley was gone, not on leave, not being retrained, terminated. How do you want to handle the permanent engineering lead position? I want to offer it to you if you're interested. Permanent promotion, significant raise, full management authority. I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. Yes, I'm interested. We negotiated details over the next few days. The title would be Director of Engineering, the same level Wesley had held. The compensation was 40% higher than my senior engineer salary. I'd have budget authority and hiring power. Franklin made it clear he trusted my judgment and wanted me to build the team my way. I accepted officially on a Wednesday. By Friday, the announcement went out company-wide. The engineering team threw an impromptu celebration with grocery store cake and sparkling cider. It was silly and perfect. Alex took me to dinner that night at the nicest restaurant we could afford. To the director of engineering, he toasted. To standing my ground, I countered. That too, I'm proud of you. This whole situation could have gone so differently. It almost did. If Franklin hadn't been paying attention, if the build server hadn't gone down at exactly the right moment. But it did, and you handled it perfectly. You didn't sabotage anything. You didn't play games. You just maintained your boundaries and let the consequences unfold naturally. He was right. I hadn't caused the system outage. I just built infrastructure in a standard way, and when Wesley tried to punish me by revoking access without understanding the dependencies, his own action created the crisis. The poetic justice was almost too perfect. What are you going to do differently as director? Alex asked. Everything, I said. Reasonable hours, respect, transparency, sustainable practices, all the things Wesley didn't believe in. Think you can change the culture? I think I already started. The first month as director of engineering was intense but satisfying. I hired 2 new developers to fill gaps and reduce individual workload. Implemented a formal on-call rotation with compensatory time off. Created clear career development paths so people understood how to grow. Established monthly one-on-ones with every team member to catch issues early. I also addressed the build server situation permanently. Worked with Kevin from IT to restructure the architecture so critical systems had redundant administrative access and proper failover procedures. No more single points of failure tied to individual accounts. The new setup was documented extensively and reviewed by multiple people. This is really solid work, Kevin said as we finished the implementation. Should have been set up this way from the start. Lessons learned, I said. Sometimes it takes a crisis to reveal structural weaknesses. The team transformed quickly. Within 3 months, we delivered every major project on schedule. Employee retention was perfect. Team surveys showed dramatically improved morale. People smiled again. Thomas made it to his daughter's soccer game. Amanda rejoined her cycling group. Turned out that well-rested engineers with reasonable expectations produced better work than exhausted ones working under constant pressure. Franklin presented our metrics to the board as a case study in effective leadership. Other departments started asking how we maintained high productivity without the grind culture. The answer was simple: reasonable expectations and respect for people's time. 6 months later, I got an unexpected call. Wesley's attorney. He was filing a wrongful termination lawsuit claiming I'd sabotaged the build server. My stomach dropped, but our legal team was ready. Server logs proved I hadn't touched anything. Architecture documentation showed the access dependency was standard configuration. The investigation findings detailed his pattern of unreasonable demands. 3 months later, his attorney withdrew the lawsuit entirely. The evidence was too clear. Wesley had taken his final shot, and it failed. Life moved forward. The engineering team continued thriving. Alex and I moved in together, got that dog we talked about. Work-life balance wasn't just a concept anymore. It was my actual life. Evenings free. Weekends for living. Energy to invest in relationships and personal growth. Looking back, that Friday afternoon became a defining moment. Not because of what happened to me, but because of what it taught me about knowing your worth and defending it, about the difference between compliance and respect, about how standing firm on principle, even when it's frightening, is the only way to build something meaningful. Wesley saw someone he could push, and he was wrong. The build server crisis just made that miscalculation visible to everyone else, but the real victory wasn't the promotion or vindication. It was proving that boundaries aren't negotiable and respect isn't optional. That sustainable success comes from treating people well, not grinding them down. Document everything. Know your worth. Understand your leverage. Set clear boundaries. Be willing to accept consequences. Organizations that can't respect reasonable boundaries aren't worth sacrificing yourself to appease. Your boundaries aren't negotiable. Your expertise has value. Your time matters. That's the real story behind those few minutes on a Friday afternoon. Behind the access, denied notification, and Wesley's smirk, and my quiet observation about the build server. It wasn't about revenge or cleverness. It was about someone who decided their boundaries mattered more than avoiding conflict, and a system that ultimately recognized that principle. If these stories about workplace dynamics and standing firm on principle resonate with you, consider subscribing. We're building toward 9,000 subscribers who believe respect in professional settings isn't just nice to have, it's essential. Your support helps these stories reach people who need to hear them. Until next time, remember, you teach people how to treat you, and sometimes teaching that lesson requires being willing to walk away. I didn't have to walk away, but I was prepared to, and that willingness made all the difference.